It is my honor to be speaking with Esperanza Fonseca today. Esperanza is a survivor of the sex trade who is well known for her militant organizing and agitation against the exploitation of the masses of women and trans persons today. She's a revolutionary communist and has provided our movement with indispensable analysis of the sex and porn industry, which I will link some of her work in the show notes. And now she organizes low-wage healthcare workers. Today we are going to discuss the importance of physical health, fitness, and discipline for our movement against capitalism, colonialism, and patriarchy, our movement for national liberation, proletarian democracy, and the freedom of women and trans persons from exploitation everywhere. And the last thing I wanted to mention is that we are splitting the main feed of the podcast from our Patreon. We're going to focus less on the theory and practice of revolutionary communism on the main feed, and more so on the advanced ideas and practices of progressive Christians here in the US. But if you're interested in studying revolutionary communism, if you're interested in becoming an organizer, becoming an activist, becoming a revolutionary, we invite you to check out our Patreon. You can access a ton of bonus episodes and writings on revolutionary theory and practice for $2, $5, and we may be rolling something special out for $10 contributors soon. But even if you're not interested in studying revolutionary theory and practice, we appreciate all the support for the main feed of the show as well. All right, solidarity to you all, and let's get to my conversation with Esperanza Fonseca. Esperanza, it's great to have you on this show tonight to just be able to chat with you about fitness, but something perhaps much deeper and important, discipline. And that's kind of the theme that I think is actually underlying this whole discussion on developing practices around physical fitness and caring for our actual bodies, our health. But to me, there is this really important connection to discipline, which actually brings us to the first question, so we might as well dive in. As revolutionary communists, or just, perhaps someone's listening in and they're an organizer, an activist, or just someone who's deeply committed to justice and liberation in general, why would we exercise and give attention to our physical health? And how is physical fitness and health an arena of political and class struggle?
Yeah, so I think that I will go ahead and answer the first part of that question, or at least, attempt to outline some of my thoughts on that, which is why do we pay attention to our physical health and to exercise? And I think that, there's a few reasons. The first is quite obviously for the health benefits, right? We know that, exercise, fitness prolongs life, it improves concentration, motivation, energy, mood. When we exercise, we boost our brain's dopamine, norepinephrine and serotonin, which helps with focus and attention and just, general mental health. And I think that's really important. And I don't think that we should, downplay that. As people who are often dealing with the worst of the world's problems, thinking through them all the time, organizing in community with people who are often constantly in crisis, taking care of our mental health is really extremely important. And I've learned that as someone who's organized for around 10 years now, that that's part of how we stay in the movement, how we stay organizing. I also think that, another benefit of exercise is that it improves our self-confidence, which is also important because, I'm constantly trying to help people move from, online commentary towards on the ground organizing. And when you have self confidence, it often makes it easier for you to be able to knock on someone's door, to be able to approach someone in your community, to have a cold conversation with someone. So I don't think we should downplay, the effect of self confidence in our political work as organizers. I also think that movement, that fitness, strength is a right that belongs to the people, but it's often taken from us. We see the destruction of public space in our communities. We don't have any green space. Oftentimes, parks are taken away. You look at Los Angeles, where parks that used to be accessible to the people, as gentrification continues to take over our neighborhoods, right? They're no longer accessible to us. Additionally, as our work days are increasing, our hours are increasing, it's taken. And I think that reclaiming that right is very important. I also think it's important in the sense of discipline and learning how to push through hardship and struggle. So I think about, being at the bottom of a very heavy squat or the bottom of a very heavy bench, and you have to learn to push all the doubt in your mind to the side and just get it up. And I think that that is something that can be applied to other areas of life. I also think consistency, right? When we talk about discipline and the need to go back to something day after day after day. And in our culture, we're often so used to these quick fixes, right? That's one of the reasons why, surgery, for example, is so, proliferated because people, the surgery industry, preys on people's vulnerabilities, but then also taps into this desire for an immediate quick fix. And exercise is something that is not a quick fix, right? It's something that you have to keep coming back to get good at. And I think that that also helps remold ourselves and retrain our minds. And then, I think it's important to strive for that kind of discipline in all areas of our life, not just with physical fitness, but with study and also with organizing, because organizing is also something that doesn't happen overnight and it's not a quick fix, and it can take years to see something come through. And then lastly, as a member of a women's organization, an organization of, women of color, it's also very clear that being strong is important for our own self-defense. There's this meme online, a fascist worked out today, did you? But the reality is that's actually very true. The far right, in a way, has really sort of taken over and monopolized, fitness culture. And, they use that to often intimidate us, right? And I think that it's very important for those of us on the left to get strong and to be able to defend ourselves. And then lastly, I guess this is truly the last thing I have to say on that. But I was having a conversation with Jen Marley, who is a comrade from the Red Nation, and we were discussing how even just being strong, being able to deadlift heavy, that all translates into real tangible skills when you're in the middle of a direct action or a protest, or you're trying to hold the line, or you need to pick a comrade up, or you need to move something quickly. That's important. And so I think for all of those reasons, it's important that we, as revolutionaries, as organizers, also focus on our physical health and fitness.
I think you helped us think about something really clear and kind of dominant in our culture today is how the right has taken over, the right has co-opted fitness culture, and it's used it in very destructive, very unhealthy ways. But I love all that you just brought to us, right? You started off talking about becoming healthier people, right? Mentally and emotionally, and how literally our brains our feelings and our moods are connected to our physical health, developing that self-confidence. When we go out talking with neighbors or our coworkers or tenants or whoever we're trying to organize, some folks have a hard time talking with others because there's a lack of confidence, and that confidence, of course, can be developed through experience, through time, but perhaps exercising can also be another area where someone can have their confidence developed. I also really connected with that pushing through hardship. Whether you're organizing or whether you are in the gym or maybe you're thinking about a relationship, there's just so many areas of our lives, or maybe you're at a really, really terrible season of life for a plurality of reasons. Hardship can really debilitate us and make us want to just kind of sit back and give up. But as we develop the capacity to push through, the capacity to kind of confront whatever that tension is, again, whether it's like physical or emotional or, one might say spiritual, whatever that is, especially as, political organizers, people who are really trying to push for transformation, develop the activity of the people, get people involved in real struggles to transform their lives, the conditions that they're living in, to fight for their and their neighbors and their loved ones' own interests. We really do need to have that capacity and that willingness to push through hardship. And so, yeah, you brought a lot of really, really great stuff there. And I hadn't thought about it, but the emphasis on the self-defense, I think, is really, really pertinent too. Whereas so much of our culture, I think, wants us to sit at home on our asses on the couch and kind of consume food, consume drinks, consume television. And so we're not thinking, we're not engaging, we're not participating, we're not moving. We're actually literally, they're creating our bodies and our habits and our attitudes that help reproduce our exploitation and our oppression. So yeah, I think there's a lot of different reasons why physical fitness and health should be taken seriously among people who are generally for justice and liberation, for struggles for transformation of the world. And especially as revolutionary communists, I think developing practices of physical fitness can really unleash our organizing dedication, our organizing commitment, and such as well. And to the latter half of that question on how physical fitness and health is specifically an arena of political and class struggle, which might not always seem like it, right? When you look at a gym driving down the street, you don't see, class struggle. But physical fitness and our health is clearly a site for class struggle because, first of all, our bodies and our labor power do not belong to us under capitalism. I sell my labor power to people far more powerful than me because I want to survive. I want my family to survive. We need to eat food. We need to have a roof over our head. And so my labor power isn't used for things that I think is life-giving. It's not used to bless the world or bless my own body. It's simply I am told what to do by my body. And so in many ways, my labor power and my body, but really as the working class and colonized nations here in the US, our bodies do not belong to us. And so the physical health is certainly connected to, right, our material bodies. And especially our material health doesn't really matter at all. It doesn't matter whether we're sick. It doesn't matter whether we die. All that matters to the ruling class here is the reproduction of our class's labor. So you can see that on a small level at your workplace when a single coworker gets fired, right? Doesn't matter whether they have a job lined up, doesn't matter whether they have access to food or shelter after that being fired. But on that micro level, we can see how all that matters is the reproduction of the power and the profit of the employer. But what's really happening is on a larger level throughout our particular nation, right? The United States, there's a class struggle between a ruling class and the masses of laboring people. It's not just an individual worker. I don't matter to the ruling class, but the working class matters to the ruling class, right? A single colonized individual doesn't matter to the colonized nation, right? White America, but the masses of laboring oppressed peoples matter because that's how they get their profit. That's how they reproduce their power. So yeah, what do you think, Esperanza? Do you think that that physical fitness and health is a site for political and class struggle?
Yeah, I absolutely do, right? I mean, I think that we would probably both agree that, almost everything in our life is a site for political and class struggle. But I think it especially becomes more obvious for anyone who goes to a gym anywhere across the so-called United States. And we see Tea Party flags, we see Blue Lives Matter flags, and we see which group is sort of hegemonic in those, fitness in those strength building spaces. And I think that, on a very concrete level, even just the fact of like, again, what kind of culture is being promoted in these gyms and in these establishments. And it's, a sort of patriotic, reactionary, nationalist culture, pro police, state violence culture that we need to combat. And I think that, we have not done such a great job doing that.
Absolutely. And super patriarchal as well. I used to be militantly obsessed with working out back when I was in my undergrad, and I want to say more about this a little bit later, but I had a very unhealthy perception of myself. But it wasn't just me individually, right? I was amongst a community of people who were going to this gym, and we were collectively reproducing this culture. We were reproducing these negative perceptions of ourselves, these negative perceptions of each other, this obsession with how we would look, how other people looked. So yeah, I absolutely think you're right that that's a great example as to how the kinds of culture that certain kind of fitness experiences and fitness communities can develop will either serve the liberation of women, the liberation of trans folk, the liberation of the masses of working and laboring peoples, or it's going to reproduce our exploitation, reproduce our oppression. So cool, let's move on. At the root of this all, there are some primary and some really strong and determinative causes within the United States for our physical, our mental, and our emotional lack of health, right? Our ill-being. Well, what perhaps are some of the primary determinants of our lack of health?
Yeah, so, of course, this not being my main area of study, but I think that there are, a few things that we could name as the root causes for, you know, our lack of, physical, mental, emotional health, right? I think that, the first thing is that all of our systems under capitalism, from our food system to our healthcare system, are organized around a profit motive. And this has led in, a very real sense to the health and the safety of our people um, not being a priority at all. And the ability for those at the top to profit to be how decisions around our health are made. And I think specifically in what we call the US, we see that, this has led to major problems in health. I mean, everything from, the fact that over 41 million people in the US alone face hunger and around 13 million children, but also the rise in malnutrition with regards to overeating because the food that is produced and sold to us is calorie dense, but is empty when you look at their nutritional profiles, right? So you see that so many of us are deficient in things like fiber, despite the fact that we're often overeating, right? Vitamins, minerals, even like because of capitalist soil practices, right? We see a decline in nutrients available in whole foods, right? And this is a huge, huge, huge problem. Of course, this has in turn led to a boom in the diet industry as well as the supplement industry, which has not made any positive impact on our physical or mental health, and it's often just made those problems worse. And the only group of people that it's benefited have has been, the sort of rich executives at the top that have profited off of the problems that they themselves have created. I think also we have to look at, daily life under wage slavery, the amount of hours that we're working, the stress that we have in our daily lives. You look at women, especially with the double shift that's expected of women, and that in and of itself has huge negative impacts on health. And then, of course, this, epidemic of state violence that we see against, people who are colonized or nationally oppressed also has a huge impact on health. I also think, monopoly capitalism and neoliberalism and how it's affected our healthcare system. Just in COVID, for example, we saw how, our healthcare system has always been bad, but just since the 90s, for example, or since the 80s, hospital beds have been declining, right? And, as someone who organizes healthcare staff, I also see the way in which you know, our healthcare staff are just seen as sort of exploitable labor, and there's absolutely no care put into their lives. And so, just to give you an example of this, like 1 in 20 resident physicians has admitted to making a mistake that's resulted in costing a patient's life. This is one of the biggest studies done on that, and that's because these residents are expected to work 80 hours a week on very low wages, and I just think that that's such a sort of microcosm of how our entire healthcare system is, right? There's absolutely no investment made into delivering, high quality healthcare to people, except for those who can afford to pay for it, right? And then I also think, another thing that we have to talk about is like environmental racism, right? And look at how it's, the most exploited among the working class and nationally oppressed communities that are exposed to the worst kinds of toxins and pollutants that also have a very real effect on our bodies and on the bodies of, our children that haven't even been born yet. And I think just the way that, our entire life is structured under capitalism, like you were saying earlier, right? Our time is constantly being commodified more and more and more. And so, for example, you see TikTok and, Instagram and Facebook engineering algorithms to keep us hooked on our phones, all the time. Netflix, for example. I know we have problems with David Harvey, but he calls it the Netflix economy, right? Which is how, like, even Netflix, when you're watching a show or a movie, it immediately puts another one in the queue to automatically go on. And so I think that what we see is that, they're just increasingly pushing us into being very passive consumers, almost like that one Black Mirror episode. Um, and those are some of the causes that I think I could name. But I'm
Yeah,
curious what you think about that.
yeah, definitely. I think you named a lot of great examples, especially, on the concerning the reality that we don't control either our time, nor do we control the production of food. Like those two things seem so basic to human life, to human flourishing, towards physical health and mental, relational, emotional well-being. All right, right? If you don't control really how much time you have outside of work, because well, you have to pay these bills, and so you might think you're free, but now you're working 50-hour weeks. Now you're working 60-hour weeks, or maybe more and more. We're working longer and longer hours. So how can we imagine ourselves to really think of ourselves as free when really our time is bought, it's controlled. Also, there's a lot of folks right now who are really concerned about the rising cost of food. Now, the ruling class gives two shits about a couple bucks, bread or juice or milk or eggs going up a dollar or two, right? That doesn't even touch them, but it does touch us, right? A few dollars added on to our food bill does matter to us. And so, on one hand, we don't control the price or the cost of what we're needing to purchase, but we definitely don't control the production of what is actually being produced. And so, we are purchasing things that we're not actually really for sure what's in this, right? I buy food all the time, and I'm like, huh. I'm not for sure what all ingredients went into this product, and that's really concerning. I'm always wondering. I'm like, I wonder what kind of health problems I may have in the future, or perhaps generationally we will see because we were sold this product, and we had no idea what was in it. But the laws obviously served the capitalists who produce this food for profit rather than the masses of laboring people who buy the food for life. So yeah, I think that was a great example. But you also were touching on alienation. So whether it's social media or the general deterioration of relationships and communal structures happening in the U.S. And obviously it's not happening within a year or a decade, but over these last couple decades, I think there has been an increasing alienating of people. And it's not that we're becoming more individual, but we are becoming more isolated. We're being stripped apart. We're spending more time on our phones scrolling through TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. We're spending more times at home on video games or reclusing to ourselves in our apartments, and less time with community, less time with friends, less time depending or serving or loving one another. And I think that has really that's probably one of the fundamental uh, grounds in which you take out our communal and our relational stability because we are deeply relational beings. I think that really pushes us over the edge and really destroys our physical health, but also our mental and spiritual and emotional health as well. So earlier I had mentioned that I had pretty militantly been obsessed with working out back when I was in undergrad, and it took me a couple years to really reflect on the unhealthy ways that I had thought about myself, I related to my own body, and how I was seeing and relating to other people's bodies. And so I just wanted to open up the conversation I wanted to talk about what are some unhealthy perceptions of in relations to the body, right? How does this dominant culture around physical fitness and physical health serve our our exploiters and oppressors as opposed to the masses of people?
Yeah, so I'm really curious what you have to say on this. I guess, just starting out, there's sort of three main things that come to mind when I think about how the dominant culture around physical fitness serve ruling class interests. And, the first thing is I think the focus on aesthetics. Now, I don't think that focusing on how you look is always a bad thing. It is okay to want to feel good about ourselves. It is okay to want to feel good about, how we walk outside that day. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I think that at the same time, this obsession with aesthetics and aesthetics being the main and only goal of physical fitness is a very unhealthy thing. And I think that it serves the ruling class interests and their culture. Additionally, I think that oftentimes, when we look at the kind of body image or, so-called image of health that we see projected by fitness influencers online, it proposes a body image which is often very lean. You sort of associate, for example, a six pack or some guy being shredded with him being super fit. But what people don't often realize is that one, being that lean is actually not healthy, right? And so when you look at bodybuilders online and they're super shredded, um, one, in order for them to maintain that, they either one have to be on, anabolic steroids, or two, they cannot be that lean year round because if you don't have enough fat, you literally cannot build muscle. It messes with your hormones. So, I think that there's also this sort of fake image of fitness that's being promoted, and it's very ableist, it's also very fat phobic, and it's just completely incorrect. And I think it causes a lot of mental health problems for people because they don't realize that that's not attainable and it's also not sustainable. The second thing is that I think that the dominant physical fitness culture is really imbued with individualism, right? This sort of capitalist individualism. We often see fitness culture being promoted around this, idea of individual ascension to success. So it's very tied in with, corporate business, self success, entrepreneur, ideology. I also think that we see a lot of fitness culture being promoted, in ways that isolate us, and that's often connected to patriarchal culture. So, we see a lot of like, jokes being made on Instagram Reels or TikToks about guys going to the gym because their girlfriend broke up on them. And, you have these like audio backgrounds that are like, I don't talk to anyone, I don't go out with anyone, I just stay by myself because I can't trust anyone. And I think that like that's also a very dangerous sort of line of thought being pushed within fitness culture. And then I also think that fitness is promoted as a cure to capitalist woes or to capitalist alienation. And, it's used to further numb us and disconnect us from political struggle. Instead of thinking about our problems and how we can organize as a class in order to change them, Our problems are individualized, and, we're just told to keep going to the gym, keep working on ourselves. It's all about this individual idea of working on ourselves. And then, the third point I want to make is that dominant fitness culture, in particular for women, reifies the patriarchal beauty standard and a harmful body image. And I think that it's very much based on patriarchal rape culture. I often think about how these ideas that are just taken as common sense, just taken for granted by people about women being naturally very much weaker than men, how much of this is actually shaped by the beauty standard for women being one of underdeveloped musculature, the image of women as weak. I mean, if you look at women who work really hard to get strong, you see that they're not as weak as this culture will make you think, right? But yet you look at what the beauty standard is and what the fitness community promotes for women, and you see a lot of women, for example, afraid to train their upper bodies because they don't want to look masculine, they want to look feminine, um, making men feel comfortable. And I think that the fitness industry is really complicit in promoting that.
Yeah, I agree with all that you said. One of the things that really stuck out to me was this development of the identity of this individual who goes to the gym, who sees themselves as a person who is known for working out, who's known for pushing themselves, trying to get bigger biceps or their butt to look a certain way, their abs to look a certain way. Right there's this identity that really gets wrapped up and it becomes very self-absorbed, and it's also very gendered as well, as you had said, right? Men are supposed to look a certain way, act a certain way, and women are told to form their bodies in a certain way, to lift a certain way. And in so many ways, the dominant culture around physical fitness really does reproduce both capitalist ideology. It's just perfect for capitalism, because you don't want people thinking of themselves as collectives, as communities, as people with class or national interests. You just want them obsessed with their individual selves, even to the point of their physical body individually. And it really, I think, even though physical fitness it seems like something that we're doing externally, it is an internal transformation. It's shaping us deep down. It's shaping our emotions and our spirit and our soul towards ways that are very destructive, both towards ourselves and to others. And yeah, so I appreciate you naming all those really helpful ways of identifying the unhealthy perceptions. But let's go ahead and turn about what might be some healthy perceptions and relations, in light of this dominant culture around physical fitness that is, it's capitalist, it's patriarchal, it's racist, it's colonial, it's ableist, it's really destructive. So what perhaps might be some more healthier ways of perceiving our bodies, perceiving other people's bodies, and relating to this physical fitness and health in general?
Yeah, well, when I think about now what motivates me to get strong, to lift heavy, to work out, but also what kind of fitness culture I want to promote among people, the first thing is that, I want to get strong so that I could be there for my people, right? I want to get strong and get, adept at this so that I could help the younger generation take care of their health, help the younger generation get strong, stay fit, because that's important. We never know how we might need to show up for our people, whether we're out of direct action, whether we're attacked, whether we need to help people, you don't know, but staying strong is important. And I think that there are some, you know, figures on the left that have begun promoting this idea that, this is something we want to do not for ourselves, not simply for ourselves as individuals, but for our community. And I think that is a very good attitude to have. Um, and I think that that can especially be developed when we train with other activists, with other organizers, right? I was a part of a group where we would study together, we would organize together, but we would also train together. And that was one of the most transformative experiences I've had. And I think that if anyone listening has not done that yet, it's something that you should really try. I mean, really training with the same people in your reading group, right? And then also organizing with those same people. And I think that what you get from that experience will be a lot. I don't know if that makes sense, but you'll gain a lot from doing that. I also think, focusing primarily on building strength over aesthetics. Again, I don't think that there's anything wrong with wanting to feel better about yourself. It's okay to say, like, hey, I want to grow the muscle in my legs, or I want to grow the muscle on my back. Like, that's okay, right? And I don't think we should take this, sort of individualist approach of like, no, that's bad. Like, that's, sort of a sin. No, I don't think that. I think it's okay. I just think we can't become sort of obsessed with it, right? But I do think that we need to, at least in my sport, right, which is, sort of strength training, we need to move away from this focus on aesthetics and towards a focus on building strength, right? And then, lastly, I think, and this is particularly for those of us who are survivors of gender based violence or who are women, which is that, so often we're taught to base our self worth over how men view us sexually or romantically, and how men see the worth in us. And I think that, fitness and in particular strength training is often a way for us to develop a self worth, a self concept that is not based on male attention or male validation, but is based on something else, something tangible. And for me, that's been physical strength. And I think for those of us who are survivors of gender based violence, of the sex trade, fitness can be a really important tool in our own healing to allow us to get out of our own heads, reconnect with our bodies, and ultimately allow us to get back in the community to organize.
Yeah, I really liked all of that. Particularly, you mentioned community, re-engaging physical fitness, not just for your individual self, but actually for your community, for your people, for the class struggle, for women all across the world. And my wife and I, we had just had a baby, and our daughter is going to grow up, and I want her to be trained in self-defense. I want her to be able to physically, take down someone who might want to hurt her. But that kind of physical fitness, that kind of training that I'd like her to develop one day, it's not about her individual self, but it's about fighting patriarchy, fighting fascism, and fighting capitalism. So I really like that emphasis on combating the individualist tendency within the physical education culture and really replacing it with a more communal, but also a more like a revolutionary tendency as well. And yeah, and particularly as a man, I hear you saying that as a woman, you want to encourage women to resist what men impose upon women with the development of an identity connected to how men like see them sexually or see them romantically. I just want to think about this for a second as a man. So I think perhaps from my side, then men need to really combat this tendency that we are all raised to do, is to assume sexual relations with or sexual interest with women that we see, to assume romantic relations, to always impose our sexual and romantic desires on any woman that we see, whether that be in the gym or on the street or in our communities, or it even happens in our organizations, right? So perhaps that is a main focus that men need to combat, name, acknowledge, resist collectively within our exercising circles and such. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the reasons why I hate going to commercial gyms, even though they're the most affordable, is because a lot of men go there and are very creepy towards me and towards other women. And it's really not okay, right? Like the gym is a place where we should all go and just be able to work really hard and get strong. But oftentimes men make that environment hostile, which also makes the gym an unwelcoming place for women. But another thing that I mean by that is, women who train hard and build their muscles, especially their upper body, I cannot tell you how many men message me and tell me not to train hard, not to work out. I even had a doctor tell me because I transitioned. I literally had a doctor tell me, now you need to stop working out and be more
Mm,
like a girl. You can't
mm,
work out too much. Or, let's say you train really hard and you start seeing some vascularity, which means some veins, right? Which happens. It could happen for numerous factors, right? We're told, oh, that's manly, you shouldn't do that. Men almost want us to fit this like, weak, frail image of what a woman should be. And that's really bad. And that's based in rape culture. And so I think even men interrogating the way that, they've been socialized to be attracted to a certain kind of woman and what that means, right? Why is it that women have to be small so that men can feel big, or women have to be weak so that men can feel strong, right? I mean that's really bad for multiple reasons, and I think that's a huge part of rape culture, and I think that we need to fight that.
Yeah. And the best way to combat this, I think, amongst men who are really committed to combating the patriarchy that's been kind of instilled within us from our birth, is through criticism and self-criticism. So I'd really encourage any guys out there who are into physical fitness, or perhaps are listening to this and saying, you know what, I want to form some discipline around my physical fitness, and whatever that practice might look like for you. Get some people together to name the ways that you fail, name the mistakes that you made, both in thinking and in practice, in relation to patriarchal habits and attitudes towards women. And I think that's the most effective way. It's not going to be easy. It's not easy to say, you know what, I fucked up here, and or to talk to your friend and say, hey, you know what, I think you fucked up here, right? But that is how we develop. That I think that's a true sense of love, both for yourself, for your friends, and for the people that we have everything in common with for our struggle for liberation. All right, and to wrap this up, to be a little bit more on the practical side, there's no one workout for anyone out there. That's not what we're suggesting. And actually, I think what you'll share and what I'll share will hopefully illuminate that there are so many different ways of engaging physical exercise and physical health. But we invite, or I personally, I want to invite listeners to start to think about it for yourself. What might be a first stage of development for you and your physical health? What baby steps might you start taking in terms of exercising and really being concerned about yours, your loved ones, your families, your communities, your friends' physical health, and really transforming, again, these deep internal ideologies that are just constantly being bombarded upon us, and our actual like material, our ability to move, our ability to run, our ability to carry and breathe, all that stuff. So let's go ahead and Esperanza, what's your routine look like today, and perhaps what tips might you have for some beginners?
Yeah, so I guess what I'll do is sort of go through what my weekly routine looks like and then give some tips for beginners, which take them or leave them. If they're helpful, apply them. And if not, there will be other tips, But for me, I lift 4 days a week. I do a typical bodybuilding split, which is I have one push day, which is like bench press, shoulder press, things like that. And then I have a pull day, which is like, chin ups, barbell rows, pulling motions. And then I have two lower body days focusing on, developing quads, hamstrings, and glutes. And I want to say glute development is not simply about aesthetics. It's actually the biggest muscle group in the body, and it's extremely important, especially in preventing lower back injuries and in developing core stability. Just a lot of reasons to train that. And so I lift 4 days a week, but I also try to get in 10,000 steps a day. Now, 10,000 steps a day was created by, Japanese pedometer companies as a marketing gimmick. There were some studies, and what those studies revealed or suggested is that trying to get a little over 6,000 to 10,000 steps a day is actually a healthy, goal to work towards. And the reason why is because it's called non-exercise activity thermogenesis, or NEAT, and it's the energy expended for everything we do that is not exercise or sleeping or eating, basically. So it's pretty much how active you are throughout the day. As we know, our lifestyle, especially in the US, is very sedentary. And so trying to fit in more walking throughout the day is actually one really good first step for people. And also, I think an important step, even for those of us who do practice sports or who do lift. It's important for disease prevention, cardiovascular, and just overall health. And then I also do some cardio, which I do through Muay Thai. And I do that because, being able to defend yourself doesn't just mean being strong through lifting weights. You actually have to train in combat sports and in self defense. Now, in terms of, what I think are some tips for beginners, I think that if you are, definitely just starting and you've been really sedentary, I think starting with just a walking routine can be really helpful. Trying to get in, setting a goal for yourself on how many steps you want to get in a day or how long you want to walk a day, and just starting there is fine. I think that, whatever exercise you are most attracted to, finding that and sticking with it is important. For me, that's been weightlifting, right? But for you, that might be swimming, that might be running. Um, I would encourage people to do weightlifting because I love it so much, but I guess I understand that's not for everyone. But I think the most important thing, especially if you're a beginner, is sticking with it. Even if you do 10 squats a day and that's it, but you do it, it will become a habit that you could build off of. And a lot of times we have a tendency to think that it's this all or nothing mindset, right? It's like, I have to go so hard every day. And that's not always the case. It's okay to start slow, start light, start small, but focus on consistency and build up from there. You know, I can't talk about this issue without also talking about mental health and social anxiety, because I think that affects so many of us, and so much more of us than we like to think. And I just want to say that there was a time, especially in the beginning of COVID, where I could not leave my room for months because of how bad my mental health was and how bad my social anxiety was. And at that time, I found some free YouTube videos and I just started doing it. And I started doing it every day. And it really helped me come out of that really bad period. And so, if you're a listener and you are having really bad social anxiety or really bad mental health problems, and you're like, I can't go to a gym, I can't go outside, just start with something that you can do and don't beat up on yourself. And just start wherever you can and build from there. And you could do it. I'm sorry, that's all I wanted to say, but I'm also interested in what your weekly routine is and how it's changed.
But no, I really appreciate that you brought that in because there are a lot of folks. I mean, a lot of our friends, a lot of our community members are really presently struggling with just living right now. They're struggling with getting up out of their bed, let alone exercising. And actually, as we all kind of know scientifically, but we don't really know until we experience it. Exercise can really stimulate that drive. It can get those endorphins pumping and give you some energy that you may not have right now. The challenge, of course, is getting to that routine of exercising week in and week out. So, no, I really appreciate you throwing out, on one hand, just that general grace for people who may not in this moment be at a place where they can, but just put it in the back of your mind. And in a week from now, a month from now, you may be at a new place in life where you say, okay, it's time. Now I can begin some steps and develop this practice. So, yeah, I appreciate you. Yeah, so for me, I work 40-hour weeks, sometimes 60-hour weeks. I work on my feet 12, 13, 14-hour shifts, right? So there are some folks who work at a desk, some folks who drive a truck, others are lifting boxes in warehouses. So I think it's really important for the person who's interested in developing, physical fitness to take their actual material living conditions seriously. And some people are parents, right? I'm just a newborn, but I know others who have like 3 or 4 kids, right? And that all shapes the time, the energy, the just all around kind of conditions of what kinds of exercising we can and cannot do. Because there are some days, especially after I work, where physically I gotta get off my feet. I gotta give my legs a break. So I just want to throw that out there. Or there is no one workout that everyone should do. And I think developing some discipline, some commitment, and really just taking some steps forward in being concerned with with exercising and physical health is a great leap forward, I would say. So, but for me, like I said, those are my conditions. So I try and do a 3-day work week, and every couple of months I'll actually completely mix up and shake up the workout, because the muscles will be worked for a couple weeks, couple of months, and they can start to plateau. You can push them and they'll develop. You'll push them and develop, and then they can easily plateau. And if you do the same thing for too long, then all of a sudden they can really start to decline. So I would encourage folks, if you can get in 2, 3, 4 days a week, do that for maybe 2 months, 3 max, and then all of a sudden switch up your entire routine. So all of a sudden you have new energy. You're working those muscles, maybe new muscles or the same muscles in new ways, and it really, I think, can develop the intensity in the long-term strategy of your exercising. And I kind of do that in 3 different stages. I'll do high reps, low, very, very low weight. And then now I'm actually just doing this at home. So I got a few dumbbells, very, very light weights. And I'm just doing this by my bedside, y'all. So a lot of it is just body weight and super, super high reps. But you might do that for 3 weeks, then drop instead of 50 reps, maybe do 40 or 30 for 3 months. Instead of 40 or 30, then you're doing like 30 or 20, if that makes sense. So yeah, one day I might do, or one round I might do bi-tri, and then this, day 2 will be shoulder, legs, and then day 3 will be back, chest. I'll do that for 3 months, and then I'll mix it up. All of a sudden now I'm doing back bi and chest tri and shoulder, right, whatever you want to do. Again, that's been really helpful for me. I've seen when I stick with my exercising for, not just months, but over years, you'll see some serious development over that. It might be useful for you. It might not. Might want to give it a try. And I want to definitely reiterate what Esperanza said about that grace for yourself. We should have grace for ourselves in this. There will be seasons. I think I just went a whole week without exercising, without working out. And it's because I got my ass kicked at work. And now I could be like, oh, I should have cranked in, I should have snuck in, some exercising and stuff, but I'm not going to beat myself up. I'm just going to get to it next week. Also, instead of maybe hitting the whole workout, you'll just do half a workout a day, and that's okay. Again, it's this long-term vision. It's redirecting why we're doing this away from the individualism, away from just purely developing my body and my looks and my ego, and really channeling it towards how can I develop these new attitudes, these new habits, these new relations to my body, these new perceptions of other people's health and body, but also developing this capacity of discipline and commitment and the ability to push through hardship, because we need organizers, we need people of faith, we need comrades, we need really militant, committed people to clock off out of their work, to go home to the study group, study the revolutionary history, study the revolutionary theory, to week in and week out participate in the mass work, perhaps your individual mass work or your organization's mass work, and develop people's struggles, right? Because this is really what, to me, is all about. This is what is most important, because if we don't organize, if we don't start fighting, if we don't ground our struggle on a scientific base, then it doesn't matter whether we're healthy or not, because we're all going to get crushed. And we are getting crushed. And so it's time to move away from the individualism, move away from the self-absorption, the ego, and really start to develop some collective solidarity. Esperanza, did you have anything that you want to wrap us up with?
Yeah, no, I don't think I have much else to add other than, just again, the angle that for so many of us who are survivors of trauma, sexual violence, which is extremely common, and I think it's something that, perhaps we have not talked about enough, but, so many of us are in revolutionary organizing, we're in mass organizations because of the violence we've experienced, and that violence has left trauma on us. And fitness, for me, strength training, lifting heavy, can be a tool that helps us, recover from the dissociation we experience, that can help us get back in our bodies. And I think that using it as a tool can be very helpful. And I think that, involving our comrades, our friends, our family in it, encouraging health among the people around us is really important, and it's something that we should be doing. And I really look forward to seeing how we continue to build a more revolutionary, a more proletarian fitness culture that is connected to the organizing work we're doing in the community.